Hi everybody. In today's discussion, we are going to see MCQs in the region of abdomen. So the first question, Fox inguinalis is formed by the fusion of option A, B, C, D. Which one do you think is the right answer? So what is the other name of Fox inguinalis? It is also called the conjoint tendon, which is formed by the fusion of internal oblique and transverse abdominis. So where's the conjoint tendon here? Okay, you see the inguinal canal opened up. Here, the conjoint tendon or Fox inguinalis, okay, it's formed by the fusion of upper neurosis of internal oblique and transverse abdominis, right? Of which two-thirds is by transverse abdominis and one-third by internal oblique. Now, where is this conjoint tendon located? In the posterior wall of inguinal canal, medial half of the posterior wall of the inguinal canal. Okay, and anterior to this conjoint tendon, what you see here is the reflected fibers, the reflected part of the inguinal ligament, the spermatic cord, and the superficial inguinal ring. Posterior relation for conjoint tendon will be fascia transversalis, extraperitoneal connective tissue, and peritoneum. Okay. Now, anterior wall of inguinal canal is formed by upper neurosis of external oblique, and the roof is formed by the arching fibers of internal oblique transverse abdominis. Floor is formed by the yes inguinal ligament medially by lacunar ligament. What is the superficial inguinal ring? It's an opening in the upper neurosis of external oblique. What about deep inguinal ring? Okay, that's an opening in fascia transversalis at the level of mid-inguinal point. What are the contents of inguinal canal? Spermatic cord in male. In female, round ligament. Yes, what's the other partial content? The ilioinguinal nerve. Okay, moving on to the second question. Which of the following is not an extension of inguinal ligament? Easy? Yes, what's the answer? Option D. So the inguinal ligament is what? It's nothing but the thickened lower border of external oblique upper neurosis extending from anterosuperior iliac spine to the pubic tubercle. And from its insertion, it gives three extensions. Okay. The lacunar ligament is a triangular extension covering the medial part of pecten pubis. The free concave margin of the base of the lacunar ligament that forms the medial boundary for the femoral ring. Okay. A thin extension from the base of the lacunar ligament along the pectineal line up to iliopubic eminence. That's called pectineal ligament of Hooper. Lacunar ligament is called Gimbernard's ligament. Yes. And then some fibers, they turn upwards and medially in front of the conjoint tendon to insert into linea alba. These fibers form the reflected part of inguinal ligament, which is also called the third crus of superficial inguinal ring. Now, what is this Thompson's ligament? It's nothing but thickening of fascia transversalis. Remember, it's in the posterior wall of the inguinal canal. Thickening of the fascia transversalis from the anterosuperior iliac spine to the pubis, lying immediately like parallel and behind the inguinal ligament. Okay, iliopubic tract or Thompson's ligament. What is the other name for inguinal ligament? Yes, Paupart's ligament. Okay, guys. The transtubercular plane passes through. What is the correct answer? Option C. Right. So the transpyloric plane passes through lower border of L1. Subcostal plane, upper part of L3. And transtubercular plane, yes, upper part of L5. What are the events taking place at transpyloric plane? Trans. Okay. Termination of spinal cord, lower border of L1. Renal hilum, the hilum of both the kidneys, L1. Artery, the origin of superior mesenteric arteries at L1. Neck of pancreas. What are the relation to the neck of pancreas? The P in front is pylorus. The P behind the neck of pancreas is portal vein formation. The splenic vein will be there. And finally, fundus of gallbladder. These are the events taking place at transpyloric plane. Yes, L3, origin of inferior mesenteric artery. L4, bifurcation of abdominal aorta. L5, formation of inferior vena cava. Right? Fourth question. Tributaries of inferior vena cava includes all except. Yeah, easy. Frequently asked question, even in your spotter. The left gonadal vein, yes, as well as the left suprarenal vein, they drain into left renal vein. So what are the tributaries of the inferior vena cava? The right and the left common iliac vein, they unite to form the inferior vena cava, which receives the lumbar veins. There are 4 lumbar veins. The third and the fourth, they open directly into IVC. The second and the first, they unite to form the ascending lumbar vein. The ascending lumbar vein, that also opens into the inferior vena cava. Okay. And then high up, you can see the renal veins. The renal veins on both the sides, the suprarenal vein, okay, the right suprarenal vein and the right gonadal vein, they open directly into IVC. Whereas on the left suprarenal vein and the left gonadal vein, I told you they open directly into left renal vein. Okay, so the phrenic veins and hepatic veins, they also open directly into inferior vena cava. Fifth question, which of the following doesn't contribute to stomach bed? So the postero-inferior surface of the stomach, those relations, they contribute to the stomach bed. The answer is yes. So what are the structures that form the stomach bed? Easy. The left crust of the diaphragm, the left suprarenal, the left kidney, the splenic artery there, the anterior surface of the pancreas. The anterior border of the pancreas gives attachment to transverse mesocolon. So all these structures, they form the stomach bed. Which is related to the third part of duodenum? Yes, easy. Answer? Okay. So how many parts of duodenum are there? The first part, second, the third, and the fourth. Okay. So each part has something that you should definitely remember. The first part has certain peculiarities. It is intraperitoneal, mobile. It is supplied by end arteries. Okay, it's more prone for peptic ulcer. It has no plica circularis. It presents the duodenal cap. Okay, remember 5 peculiarities. The second part, the interior of the second part of the duodenum, it presents the major duodenal papillae, minor duodenal papillae, plica circularis, plica semicircularis, plica longitudinalis. And the third part of the duodenum, as you see here, it's crossed by the root of the mesentery, which contains the superior mesenteric vessels. The fourth part presents the duodenal recesses, the superior, inferior, retro, and paraduodenal recess. The paraduodenal recess has the inferior mesenteric vein and ascending branch of left colic artery. Another thing to remember for the third part of the duodenum, I'll get the video done. Yeah. As you see here, the relation between, so this is the abdominal aorta. You can see the superior mesenteric artery coming from there. So in this angle between the superior mesenteric artery and the origin of from its origin from the abdominal aorta, there are three structures lying in that angle. The first one high up will be the left renal vein, and then the uncinate process of pancreas, and the third part of duodenum. The left renal vein can get compressed, leading on to varicocele. The duodenum can get compressed, leading on to obstructive symptoms. This is called nutcracker syndrome. Okay. Which is false regarding the dentate line? Take your time, read it. So what's the right answer? Okay, guys. So what is dentate line? It is also called the pectinate line. So the interior of the anal canal is divided into three parts by two important lines. The pectinate line or the dentate line and the white line of Hilton. So this pectinate or dentate line, okay, it forms the junction. It lies at the mucocutaneous junction. The upper part presents the anal columns of Morgagni that contains the radicals of superior rectal vessels, the veins. And then the lower part of these anal columns are connected by the anal valve. And then the anal sinus above receives the anal glands. Okay. The white line of Hilton is here. So there are a lot of difference, right, above and below the pectinate line. The development of the anal canal above the pectinate line is from endoderm, below by proctoderm, but from the ectoderm. Okay. The blood supply above by superior rectal artery, below by inferior rectal artery. Venous drainage above the pectinate line will drain into portal vein, below into systemic vein. Nerve supply above the pectinate line by autonomic nervous system, below the pectinate line by somatic nervous system. Okay, pain sensitive. Lastly, lymphatic drainage above the pectinate line, the area of that anal canal will drain into internal iliac nodes and below the pectinate line into the superficial inguinal lymph nodes. Okay. Now coming to the anal sphincter, this is the internal anal sphincter. The lower end of the internal anal sphincter actually corresponds to the white line of Hilton and not to pectinate line, right? Vascular segments of kidney, how many are there? Totally 5 in number. What are they? So what is the arrangement of structures at the hilum? Vein, artery and pelvis. Okay, anterior most will be the renal vein and then the renal artery and behind by the pelvis. What happens? The renal artery on reaching the hilum, it will divide into a anterior branch that goes in front of the pelvis and a posterior branch that goes behind the pelvis. This anterior branch of the renal artery will divide into apical, upper anterior, middle anterior and a lower segment, okay, branch. This is posterior, this one. So there are 5 segments, 5 vascular segments, okay. And the junction between these segments corresponds to this plane, yeah, on the posterior aspect. It's called the line of Brodel. The roof of the epiploid foramen is formed by, yes, the right answer is. So what is epiploid foramen? That's the communication between the lesser sac and the greater sac. It's around 3 centimeter. Vertebral level of epiploid foramen is T12. What are the boundaries for it? Anteriorly by the right free margin of the lesser omentum. What are the 3 structures you get to see here? The red one is, yeah, the hepatic artery there. The green one is the common bile duct. Between and behind these two, the blue one will be portal vein. Okay. And then the posterior boundary for epiploid foramen will be inferior vena cava. The superior boundary will be the caudate process. Inferior boundary will be the upper surface of first part of duodenum. Right? Content of Calot's triangle. Yes. Cystic artery, branch of right hepatic artery. So the Calot's triangle is bounded by inferior surface of the liver, the cystic duct, the common hepatic duct. Okay. Content that you see here is the cystic artery coming from right branch of hepatic artery. We'll also get to see the cystic node of lung. But now, the further research have shown that it's divided into two. The hepatocystic triangle is the one which is more clinically important. It's bounded above by the inferior border of the liver, medially by the common hepatic duct, and laterally by the neck of the gallbladder. Okay. Lower down, they tell that the Calot's triangle, the upper boundary of it is formed by the cystic artery, medially by the common hepatic duct, laterally by the cystic duct. Okay, this is Calot's triangle. Which of the following ligament contains splenic artery? Is it option A? So here, as you see here, the splenorenal ligament or the lenorenal ligament, okay, that has the tail of the pancreas and the splenic vessels. And then we have the gastrosplenic ligament that has the short gastric vessels. This is the phrenicocholic ligament extending from the left cholic flexure to the lower end of the spleen. All are lateral branches of aorta except, come on, what's the answer? Lumbar artery. Okay. So what are the ventral branches of abdominal aorta? There are three in number. Celiac trunk, okay. Vertebral level, T12. Then superior mesenteric artery, L1. Inferior mesenteric artery will be L3. What will be the paired lateral branches? Okay, as you see here, the gonadal arteries, the renal artery, the phrenic arteries, okay? Yeah, the middle suprarenal artery, all these are the paired lateral branches. Dorsal branches are two in number, the median sacral artery and the four pair of lumbar arteries. These are the dorsal branches of abdominal aorta. Morrison's pouch, what is its other name? Right? Subhepatic. So the peritoneal cavity within the abdomen is divided into a supracholic compartment and intracholic compartment by the attachment of transverse mesocolon and greater omentum. The supracholic compartment is further divided into right and left. Right and left, each with three spaces. All these spaces, all the six spaces, they lie beneath the diaphragm. They are called subphrenic spaces. On the right and left, there are each on each side one extraperitoneal and two intraperitoneal space. The extraperitoneal space will be called the bare area of the liver, bare area of the stomach. The intraperitoneal spaces are further divided into anterior and posterior. The anterior are the suprahepatic space and the posterior will be the subhepatic space. Okay, so the right subhepatic space is called the hepatorenal pouch of Morrison, which is bounded anteriorly by the inferior surface of the liver, posteriorly by the anterior surface of the right kidney and the right suprarenal, above limited by inferior layer of the coronary ligament. Below it is open into the right paracolic gutter. And this hepatorenal pouch of Morrison is the most dependent, okay, the most dependent part of the peritoneal cavity where the fluid accumulates to put a drain. The hilum of the right kidney is related to, is it? Okay. So the anterior relations of the right kidney and the left kidney, if you see the impressions with the color, you can make out that on the right side, there are around 5 impressions and on the left 6. Okay, so common to both will be 3 impressions. One is the suprarenal as you see here above, below medially the jejunal impression, below laterally colic impression. Okay. On the right side, you know there's the liver related to it. And on the left, you have the stomach and the spleen. Okay. So in addition to this, on the left, that sixth impression, remember, it's the pancreas. Okay. So yeah, the hilum of the right kidney will be related to duodenum. And the hilum of the left kidney will be related to the tail of pancreas. Okay. Is that clear? So three impressions common to both right and left kidney. Right side liver, left side stomach and spleen. The hilum of the right kidney related to second part of duodenum. The hilum of the left kidney will be related to tail of pancreas. Is that fine? Sir, the narrowest part of the ureter, vesico-ureteric junction. Surgically, the ureter presents 5 constrictions. Okay? 5 constrictions. Pelvi-ureteric junction, where the pelvis becomes the ureter proper, and then where it's going to cross the pelvic brim, where it crosses the vas deferens, vesico-ureteric junction before its entry into the bladder, and the fifth one, the ureteric orifice of the bladder. Of all the 5, the narrowest one is at the vesico-ureteric junction. False statement about trigone. So trigone, it's situated in the inner aspect of the base of the bladder, triangular in shape. Answer is option D. So the apex of the trigone is formed by the internal urethral orifice. Okay. So what do you have here? The uvula vesicae. It forms a protrusion behind the internal urethral orifice. It's produced by the median lobe of the prostate, right? The base of the trigone is formed by the interureteric line or Mercius bar connecting the ureteric orifice of both the sides. The sides of the equilateral triangle of the trigone is formed by the urethral lines. Okay. The mucosa over this region will be sort of stretched out, tense and glistening because there's no submucosa there. It will be directly adherent to the muscle below. It has a rich blood supply, nerve supply, and develops from mesoderm. Okay. The muscles attached to perineal body except easy. The perineal body is the central point of the perineum in front of the anal triangle behind the urogenital opening. It's a pyramidal fibromuscular nodular structure and the arrangement is in 3 layers, the muscle's insertion. Superficial is closer to skin. Then you have an intermediate layer and a deep layer. Superficially, it receives the insertion of superficial part of external anal sphincter. And then the superficial transverse perineal muscle. And then bulbospongiosus, which lies on either side of the midline and not the ischiocavernosus. Okay, you can see where is the ischiocavernosus here. This is your bulbospongiosus. In the intermediate stratum, it receives the insertion of deep part of external anal sphincter, deep transverse perineum. And in the deeper strata, it receives the fibers from levator ani. Okay. So injury to the perineal body can disturb the pelvic organ openings that leading to prolapse. Not a true support of uterus. Which one is the right answer here? Yes. Okay. Why? All the others are true ligament condensation of fibromuscular tissue. Broad ligament is just peritoneal fold. It cannot support the uterus as such. So where is the round ligament? The round ligament that you see here as a remnant of gubernaculum of ovary, right? From the gubernaculum, what is its extent? You see one end attached to the Uterine angle. It passes forwards laterally within the broad ligament, inguinal canal, exits out and finally attaches to labium majora. Okay. What is the function of round ligament? It pulls the fundus forward and helps to maintain anteversion, anteflexion. Second, the transverse cervical ligament, which is also called the cardinal ligament or McEnroth's ligament. It extends from the cervico-vaginal junction to the fascia covering the levator ani. So what does this do? It fixes the cervix in position so that it prevents downward displacement of the uterus into the vagina. And then the next one here, the uterosacral ligament extends backwards from the cervix, yeah, to the third sacral vertebra. It pulls the cervix backwards and that also helps to maintain anteversion, anteflexion. The pubocervical ligaments are thin expansion toward the pubic bones. They counteract excess pull by the uterosacral ligaments. The broad ligaments, on the other hand, are peritoneal fold extending from the lateral surface of the uterus to the lateral pelvic wall. Which part of male urethra is lined by transitional epithelium? Of the options mentioned here, yes. So what are the parts of male urethra? We call it as the anterior urethra and posterior urethra, right? So because of its position, the pre-prostatic urethra, the prostatic part, and the membranous part, okay, which lies here, all these three are called posterior urethra, whereas the bulbar and the penile part will be called the anterior part of the male urethra. The narrowest part of the male urethra is external urethral orifice. The second narrowest and most fixed part of the male urethra is membranous part. Okay. Now, where does this transitional epithelium begin? From the minor calyx. Where does it end? In the prostatic urethra up to the level of folliculus seminalis. From there up to the beginning of the terminal fossa, it will then be lined by stratified columnar. Only in the terminal fossa and external urethral orifice, it will get to be lined by stratified squamous epithelium, right? Nerve supply of dartos muscle. Yes, what's the right answer? Genital branch of genitofemoral nerve supplies which muscle? Cremaster. Okay. Dartos is supplied by sympathetic from superior hypogastric plexus. Okay. So three short muscles that you should remember in abdomen: nerve supply, cremaster, dartos, and one more, pyramidalis. Dartos by sympathetics from superior hypogastric plexus. Cremaster, I told you, genital branch of genitofemoral nerve. Pyramidalis, what is the nerve supply? Subcostal nerve, right? It's a tensor of linea alba. Okay, guys, any doubt, get back to me.